Yesterday, I tried to do this. Actually, I did it. I spoke about this experience and did it while I was driving from Tennessee back to North Carolina. And then I guess when I ended it, it didn't save on YouTube, that is. So I thought I'd do it again. And if anybody comes on, I'll see your comments if you throw them up. But I wanted to discuss, and let me lean down here and get her 12L on my Microsoft Surface Duo 2. And this is kind of going to be a day in the life of. I'm going to give about a 36-hour account because I thought it's a great test of 12L just to kind of get a good idea of where things are. And that's what was why I did it. Uh, just to intro into where I'm at with 12L. After the update, the initial update, I should say upgrade. It's not an update, it's an upgrade because we did go from one major version to another. I experienced some issues. They were primarily response type issues. So I'd have issues where I would be in an app and maybe just have the device open and doing something else and then come back to it and I couldn't access the app. Buttons worked. And all I'd have to do is do this and open it back up, and then I could access things. I've seen that at times before. So that was one issue that I saw. And ultimately, that issue is the one that caused me to go to a factory reset. But another issue that I saw was with gestures. And I saw that I was having problems executing the home gesture. So I'd take my screens, put them all the way over, and then execute the home gesture to see if the screens returned back to home. And that was not 100% like it was prior to 12L. Wasn't even, I don't even think it was 50%. My guess would be somewhere in the 25 to 33% of the time it would work. Now, part of that I should say, might be because I have these Super Shields screen protectors on. I'm about to pull them off. I don't like the feel, but I know that I could do these gestures prior. Now, that's not a gesture that I use. It's a rarely used gesture, to be quite honest. But when I put the Super Shields on, I did test these gestures to see. So I thought there might have been a issue with the phone app, but it turned out it was a issue in phone link. So what would happen is I'd receive a phone call, deal with the phone call, and then hang up. And sometimes I'd hang it up on the phone actually, even though I'm using phone link and communicating through the PC, or the other end would hang up. But phone link would show that I was still connected. I could end it or they could end it. Phone link would say I was show I was connected, and I'd go look on the device and no, I'm not connected. It's definitely hung up. I could make another call. So I I know that I rule that out as having been a problem, and I reference that because Some people are complaining about phone issues. So I didn't really see issues prior or post factory reset with the phone, and certainly have not seen issues with messaging using Google Messages. I receive on the group chat, I receive messages from iPhone users, I receive the messages from Android users. I'm able to send to them. I'm not aware of any missed messages. Uh, am I a heavy message user across various platforms? Decent, and the various platforms being Google Messages, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, maybe an Instagram message here and there. Uh, yeah, decent. Maybe more than a lot, but less than a lot. And howdy. So I can't say that it's a heavy use of messaging, but it's a decent, especially with my group chat. There's about 8 of us in it, and uh, I didn't change my background from my Carolina varsity, um, and I cover high school sports, and I host a webcast each week for Carolina Varsity, which is my site, and I also am a co-host on a weekly webcast from that's hosted by the Charlotte Observer, which is the largest paper in North Carolina, and it encompasses this webcast encompasses both of the major papers in North Carolina. And just to carry that one just a step further, they're also owned by McClatchy, which is one of the largest um, groups of print papers in the United States. We sometimes get cast out over all of their outlets, so it's kind of a cool thing. But anyway, um, we are very active in our webcasting. So active that a few of the guys want us to have a patron account because we kind of do this on our own time. We don't make money doing it. Anyway, that aside, I'm receiving messages. Did not see any message misses, but I was having those response issues, and that gets aggravating. When you go to use an app, and even though I could, you know, do this and open it back up and start using the device again, that just, I don't know, after so many times of doing something you shouldn't have to do, you obviously, or at least I, kind of break down and say, all right, got to fix this. I'm trying to think if there were any other pre factory reset issues. Since I only went a day and a half to, to 2 days, meaning maybe 36 to 48 hours, I don't know. I didn't use the device extensively during that time. I was at home and doing a lot of stuff on my PC. So I can't really say. I don't recall, but I do know that there reached a point, maybe 5 or 6 times of that freeze, that I said, okay, I'm a factory reset. I didn't want to factory reset. I have not done that to the Duo 2 since I've had it. Um, but I factory reset my Duo 1 a lot. So I knew that it's going to be a little bit of work to come back to full life, but it's manageable, and I can be working within an hour. And then as I use apps, I may have to do some kind of reconfiguration. But because Authenticator is handles a lot of the passwords, and then of course Edge handles passwords, etc. Um, I get those set up, everything's going to be good. So anyway, our factory reset. And I didn't see any problems since factory reset. And 2 days ago, I had to go on a business trip. Now, uh, I my real life is industrial automation, and you can think of this as if you go everything from buying a candy bar to buying an automobile, that gets made somewhere in a factory. Um, and what my job has been throughout my career has been to automate machinery that does that, help original equipment manufacturers build machinery to make stuff. More recently, I have focused on data collection. So I'm into data collection, bringing data in, running analysis, and generating reports and predicting failures and things of machinery. So uh, that's my day job. Technology has been my thing for the majority of my life. So here's a day, how a heavy day, an important day, a business travel day went for me with my Surface Duo 2. So I do use alarms. I do not have to have alarms to get up. I ever since I've gotten my sleep under control with a CPAP, I sleep well and my body knows when to wake up. So and I see this comment here about Authenticator uh, to lose. It's the very first thing I set up. So after when I factory reset and I bring things up, and I use my Google One Cloud Recovery. That's never been a problem for me on um, the Duo. There's been a few times just because I wanted to on my original Duo that after factory reset, I did not do a restore from the cloud and just went through and set everything up. And for me, it's been, one way or the other. If I'd have had problems with the factory reset, then I would have gone back and factory reset again and not restored from cloud. But anyway, let's move. I'll move on to um, so I'd use alarms. I have alarms set just to make certain something doesn't happen and I do sleep in, or I can determine if I'm gonna sleep in. So the alarm comes, it's like, okay, you passed where you thought you wanted to get up daily, but you can sleep a little bit today. So that alarm did work. Um, so I didn't have a problem with that alarm. I know that's one thing that people have complained about, and the alarm had been working previous days. So alarming worked. Uh, My trip had been put into my Outlook calendar and into Microsoft Teams. So, there's gonna be a notification that's gonna come up about it at, some point. But, go about doing my things and, you know, checking email and doing whatever messages are there, and from a phone call standpoint, I don't receive a lot of phone calls, and there's one. I'm sorry. I hooked that home phone back up. I just really receive lots of spam and scam calls. And the same is true on my work phone. The the number of real calls versus scam calls is unfortunately it's out of skew. But that's because for work we use Microsoft Teams, Zoom meetings. We use for conversation, we use those methods now and not phone. And then, of course, to stay in closer contact, messages get used. And chat in Teams is probably the bigger messaging platform that gets used by me beyond group texts, etc. Um, so in work, definitely Microsoft Teams, very heavy use, and I use Microsoft Teams on here a lot. So anyway, I'm just going about my morning. I've got to leave this morning, that morning. So I'm getting things ready, doing email, checking things, and because I'm moving around and packing up things and such, I'm using this more and not on my PC. Actually, my PC, I'd already closed it down and put it in my bag so that I could carry it. And just before I left, I went ahead and opened up the Hilton app and booked my room. I wanted to make certain things didn't get canceled on this trip, and I was going to have to deal with cancellation, etc. So I booked my room, got in my vehicle, plugged it into Android Auto, and told it where I wanted to go, and I headed out. So I'm on the road. I'm receiving my text messages. They're now coming in through Android Auto. I'm able to respond to them through Android Auto via voice. Navigation is working. Uh, just everything's working fine. I'm driving 4.5 hours. I did set up my Duo as it is a hotspot for my S21. I like to sometimes live stream my drives back on Facebook, so I do that from a Samsung S21 Ultra. So it was connected to my Duo via the hotspot, and I drive over. Uh, Pretty much the drive just had me stopping and getting a nice spicy chicken sandwich, and I just made my trip over. Got over to Tennessee. I mean, I've received a few calls, made a call or two, uh, probably responded to a dozen messages. I've gotten lots of notifications. All those things are working. I get to the hotel, I go into the Hilton app, I check in from the app, that works. One of the things that can sometimes be a problem, and this is the first time I've been to a hotel since factory reset, are digital keys. And if you're not familiar with them, uh, digital keys allow us to use the phones to get in and to our rooms in a hotel, get into the hotel. So the hotel's locked and you can go through all the doors with the digital key. And there's a little bit of some authentication that goes through and recognition of the device that it's installed on. And since whenever you do factory resets, I guess those keys get cleared, and when new keys get generated, and I'm not talking about the digital keys, I'm talking about authentication keys, then the app and the server sometimes doesn't recognize. I've seen this problem on my Samsung. So anyway, requested my key, got it, and went right in. The key worked. I've seen issues in the past with digital keys here and there, but I had no issues here. Um, and I got into my room, and of course, I'm back to checking some of the emails that came in because one thing Android Auto does not do, while it will read text messages to me, it'll read Facebook messages to me. I can actually communicate through Teams and some other um, apps, but those are the apps that I use in Android Auto. Email does not. So email's a fairly important communication tool these days for me. It's more important than phone is because most people just want to type things out in some manner. So I get in, do my emails. I've got to do a webcast, my Tuesday night webcast. So I've got to get set up for it, um, which I'll just note I successfully did that with my Microsoft Surface Laptop Go 2 that Microsoft gave me. Um, Everything, all these apps, and I'll just kind of note right now my primary use apps. I've named most of them. Of course, there's Facebook and Instagram and Telegram and Twitter and all YouTube, all your normal social apps that people use. I use them too. all of them have been working fine and are working fine. And my work apps of primarily are all Office apps. Sometimes a little bit of Adobe, and I read a PDF. And a lot of times I'll read a PDF in Adobe versus OneDrive, but that one varies. Since I have an Adobe subscription, I try to use it. Maybe took a photo or two, a video, not a whole lot that day. It was just the normal stuff, and went through, did my webcast, and then got back on the phone and looked at a few things and made a phone call home and uh, set my alarm because it's a different time that I need to get up. And so I set the alarm just to make certain. I don't sleep well at all. It's a horrible night of sleep. The alarm went off. Um, I was up before the alarm, but the alarm went off as expected. I have not had an alarm problem going off on Duo 2 ever. I know some people have this problem even back on Android 11. I've never had it. I did some research, and Google Clock has had some issues in the past, but it's not a nailed down everybody has it issue. So uh, I go through my morning routine of checking everything and sending out whatever messages I need to send out, get everything packed up, bring up Google Maps, find the nearest Cracker Barrel. I knew it was nearby, but I wanted to have pancakes. So uh, went over to Cracker Barrel again while I'm sitting there and eating my eggs and bacon and pancakes. I am doing all my stuff on my Duo, not having any issues. I mean, everything's just smooth and fast, and I'm really starting to enjoy the Android 12L. But more on that later. So I do my things, and the only thing I couldn't do, and it wasn't because of Android 12L, I noted that Cracker Barrel had a QR code on the receipt, and it said pay. You can go to the cashier and pay or pay here. So I scanned it, but it didn't allow me to pay. So that's really more a thing of it took me to the Cracker Barrel website, but didn't take me to a point to pay. So no big deal. I was going to pay from my phone. That would have been good because I do a lot of that now. And went out to the car, put navigation into the factory that I'm going to. It's a 20-minute drive. And we head over during that little short drive over to the factory. There were maybe two messages that came in. During the drive, I got a notification, popped up on Android Auto even, and told me that in 15 minutes my meeting was going to start. So I'm getting all notifications. Uh, I get too many notifications, like a lot of us, I'm sure. I'm always going in and clearing notifications. It's like they'll just go turn off notifications on some of these apps. But anyway, get to the factory. Um, I go in. Now OneNote's going to come into action. I'd already set up this meeting in OneNote on the desktop on my PC. Because I like to lay out my OneNote notebook, my pages or sections that I'm going to use. It's easier to do on the desktop app. So I get everything set up. And am I going to need grids? Am I going to need ruled line, or do I want blank pages? And I set all those up. This is so I can sketch or I handwrite. Excuse me. So I'm sitting there. We're taking our notes. There's three of us and two of them. uh, I'm there with one of my distributors, or one of the distributors, and I do contract work for them. And I tell Tyler, who's there on a paper notebook, and he's taking his notes, and I hold up the Duo with one note on it and my slim pen, and I tell him, "This is the way to do it, Tyler. Take my notes. We're ready to go out and look at the machines." Um, we walk out. And now OneNote gets some more action. One of the great things about OneNote is when I look at things and I need to remember, I take pictures and I can have them go directly into OneNote. So OneNote's just a wonderful notebook. You can put video and photo and PDFs and handwrite into it and put your emails in, and you can just do so much with it. So, as we're walking around, we had to look at five furnaces. These furnaces heat treat metals that are ultimately used. This particular OEM makes parts that go into car transmissions, automobile transmissions. Um, those furnaces were running at 300 degrees C. Um, that was the temperatures that I remember being set. And they've got controls that are from 1985, and this customer's worried that they're not going to be able to get, and they can't. It's obsolete. Those that control system. So uh, I'm taking pictures of the controller and all the cards that are in the controller and the panel that everything's in, and you know all the things that you normally do. I say you may not know, but all the things you'd want to do to document. And I'm using OneNote, not having a problem. And trust me, I'd be I wouldn't be as in good a shape if I have a problem during all this process. This is very important. I'd hate to have to go back through and do it again, get home and, you know, call the customer and say, look, I got to come back because it's a long drive. And we go through and we look at that and we look at several washers. So after the metal goes through heat treating and things, and they run it through washers, and then there are some transfer tables and a few other little pieces of equipment. So there's about a total of 11 pieces of equipment that we looked at, and I'm taking pictures and taking notes, and it's about a 2 hour. This whole episode's about 2 hours of extensively note taking, and that's it. Note taking, picture taking. That's it. Handwriting and picture taking. But all that's got to work, and I can't have freeze ups. I can't have anything. I can't tell the customer wait while I reboot and all that. I mean, I could, but it wouldn't be a good thing, and I wasn't worried about that. We go have our breakdown meeting, which is really a short meeting because we really discussed a lot on the floor, so we really didn't have to sit around a table and discuss anything. Go back out after some conversation, get in my car, decide what do I need to do. I need to head home, so navigation is going to send me home. I need fuel, so I want to find the best place to get fuel along the way. I'm near empty, so I got to be can't wait too long. So I'm doing all that stuff on Google Maps and get that laid out and get to going. And yeah, I start live streaming on Facebook like I always do, and drive over and I get my gas, and then at the gas station or fuel station, you're from another country, gasoline. After I've done all that, I thought, why don't I live stream on YouTube? Because a lot of stuff's been going down on Reddit. It's really gets, I don't let it get to me too much because I speak direct, and a lot of people can't stand direct. And they can't stand I'm not having a problem, and I must obviously you cannot be having bugs. So I'm getting downvoted like crazy, and there's just a lot of goofiness over there. Uh, but so I kind of figured because I did, at the gas station, I look on Reddit and see a few other things, and I'm like, well, I'm going to explain what my experience has been. So I started streaming on YouTube as I was driving. Now, again, Duo 2's hotspot, S21's sitting up because it mounts better. There's no real good way for me to safely put my Duo 2 up in the automobile. I don't need it for navigation because I have Android Auto and I have a display in my vehicle. So I don't need any of this stuff. But The S21 just magnetically attaches to a nice dash mount that I have, so I always stream with it. That's about all my S21 gets used for. There's a couple of other things that I use it for because it's easier for me. I use the S21 on Friday nights to video football games because I can video them in 8K. And not that I ever put them out in 8K. Best I ever do is put them out in 4K um, up on Twitter. But I'm always hot spotted to this. So I'm drive home, I do the YouTube cast. If I have signal, that's going great, which was the same way coming over. As long as I had cell phone signal, everything was fine. If not, just as you would expect, you get interruptions. But I did the live stream of this kind of experience that I'm talking about now. I went to exit it. I exited it, but I'm driving, so I can't do anything. All I could do is reach up and touch the X. And I thought it would save it, but apparently it didn't save it. That's why I'm doing this. But I navigate, drive back on over, maybe a couple of phone calls. I didn't make any received. Um, I sent some messages by voice through Android Auto, received a bunch as always. Um, navigate over, no problems, get home. Uh, because some emails had come in, I check my emails, do my things, and really, this is a day. That's a day, and a day to day. And since I have factory reset, that's been the way things have gone. I have not encountered a bug, and that's I don't know what to say about that. Um, my Android 11 experience with Surface Duo was the same before this upgrade to Android 12L. There was nothing that I was experiencing. I hadn't sent feedback to Microsoft in a while. When I installed the upgrade of Android 12L, I sent a feedback immediately because the first thing that happened on restart after the upgrade, launcher crashed. So I took a screenshot of that and did a feedback and sent it. So um, I sent a couple of feedbacks on Android 12L, with the unresponsiveness, but I didn't do a whole lot there because I started getting in my mind, I'm going to do a factory reset. Um, so I wasn't too concerned about sending feedback during that first day and a half to 2 days. 'Cause I just kind of after about a day, I knew it was going to happen. I just, for some reason, was not dreading or not wanting to do, even though I've had good experience with it on other devices. So I didn't do a lot of feedback there. And since factory reset for me, and really things were maybe okay, semi okay before factory reset, except for that unresponsiveness. And I don't know if that would have worked itself out because I don't know what it is. And your problem with Android is how do you solve these problems? So some people are having problems, and I do not discount they are having problems. Um, how do you solve those problems? Now, this is kind of my thing, especially root cause analysis. I have to do that in my day to day work. I have to do root cause analysis when a machine's not working or something's not failed or not operating properly or both not working, and there's a problem that causes that, and you have to narrow in and find the problem. Android doesn't really give you a lot of wiggle room in doing things. You've got the all important clear cache and clear memory, and clear cache works sometimes. Clear memory is like resetting the app, and you have to go back through and reconfigure things, and that's kind of a severe move to have to make sometimes. But sometimes those things fix an issue because the issues are supposed to be in Android app related, the way Android works with putting things in virtual machines and isolation. There's supposed to be no interaction between app A and app B. Uh, like I can remember issues back in Windows of installing an HP printer driver. This one was really obscure, but impacted a small segment of things with people. And it turned out, yeah, it was a common thing. You had to have this particular driver and this particular app, and they did not work. And that was because in your older versions of Windows, and why I went to Windows NT and loved Windows NT, memory, while not supposed to be shared, it wasn't virtualized and isolated from each other applications. So memory could overlap each other and cause issues. And that's not supposed to happen in Android. So you're not left with a lot of options unless maybe you're a developer and you can you want to go in and start twiddling with the Android code, running some traces and finding out, what's going on. Um, so, like the phone issue that people are seeing with is most likely an issue with the phone app or the messaging app. You can have issues with app and device firmware. So there could be, device firmware OS, those talk first, but because of maybe a firmware version you have, that causes a problem with Android that's not an immediately noticed problem. And then an app may encounter that issue where another app would not. Those things can happen. Uh, but honestly, the way that Android is things are very vertical. Um, there's not a lot of horizontal use of memory. And I'm not saying this to sell up Android. I think Android really, I think Google could do a lot better job of managing. I mean, it took Microsoft moving from DOS to Windows NT and David Cutler designing that OS of virtualization throughout. Everything's virtualized to start getting away from those kinds of issues. And that's where Android is, it does a similar model with things, with virtualization of everything. So to be able to tell people how to fix this problem is very difficult. What I think has helped some people with factory reset is because something in app layering, I don't know if cache or what, because I would have expected that clearing cache would clear things, but I don't know. I don't know enough of the technical detail at that level of Android. Unfortunately, I understand it from a high level, a higher to mid level. Um, I do code. That's one of the things I've done a lot of in the past. I do not write Android applications, but because I've had to help people either develop Android applications to be utilized with machinery like I work with, and thus I've had to help them with certain libraries of communication or talk to them about how you communicate to this device. I do have a good understanding of even the development level. Just haven't really sat down and written an app. I can go look at the developer guides and I understand the APIs, and I've done that. Um, I'm sorry. We're gonna hang up that spam call. Um, so I see there's been a few people that's come on. There's a couple of comments. If anybody's got any comments above, um, if you can avoid this pain, I will no update for me until this gets fixed. I don't know why people are having problems. And honestly, one of the things you've got to keep in mind is Reddit and YouTube is a small sample of the overall picture. Now, this is not to say that the Microsoft Surface Duo and Duo 2 picture is gigantic, because it's not. Um, we're a small community, but in any of the communities, the social media aspect of the communities is small to the overall community. Second, people complain more than they praise. So complainers are going to come out far more than praisers would. Third, in these communities, especially a Reddit community, you're going to have people that like to troll. So they're actually making up their issues. So don't doubt that some people have issues. But if I say I have an issue or you say you have an issue, and one of these people that like to troll sees that, they'll just kind of catalog what those issues are. And then they will start parroting them as if they have those issues. Um, this I know the psychology of online posting because I've been doing this stuff since 1985. Um, FidoNet, CompuServe, Usenet, um, web forums. I've beta tested for Microsoft starting from the late 80s up through 90, not 90, excuse me, 2003. I was a Microsoft MVP from 93 or 4 up through 2002 or 3, whenever that was. Um, I was on Club Win and Club IE. I was what they called team captains, which was a person. So Brad Silverberg, VP of marketing at Microsoft, Windows marketing. You can look him up if you don't know who he was. He's the brilliant guy that brought Windows 95 to life. He brought MSN to life. He brought IE to life, Internet Explorer. Those were his baby projects, and he appointed me club captain of both Club Win and Club IE. Um, and thus, I did a lot of online support of answering questions in my spare time. This is not my job. This is my spare hobby thing. Uh, so I've encountered this stuff a lot, and I know what trollers do. The word trolling and the use of concept of trolling, we I would say my generation of people brought that to fruition back in the 80s because people would do that. They would come in and they just try to stir somebody up, you know. I do some trolling every once in a while, not on Reddit. I do it on Facebook, but I do a little bit of trolling. I know some people have certain points about them, and you throw out things you know they'll bite on, and then you can get them going. And I want you to think that some of this stuff is that. So as you look, and I'm sorry, like, ouais, je parle un peu français, but la guia de Paris de Pearl Man. I'll just call you no Peer Man. Is that Peer? Is there an L in there? I'm sorry, my eyes. Pearl Man. So I'm going to call you Pearl Man if you're still there. Um, the pain of doing a reset is lessened if you have backup and you have your passwords stored somewhere. And Authenticator is now taking on that it's one of the tools that can do that, and I like Microsoft Authenticator. Probably because when authenticators came into being, I was using Windows Phone and then, of course, Windows 10 Mobile. So I started using that authenticator and did not go to another authenticator, just mainly because of that reason. And because I log into many Microsoft sites for customers, so they give me accounts and they're in Active Directories. And for me to do logins of VPN into their sites to do work, I have to go through a two-factor authentication, which is only authenticated through Microsoft Authenticator. So, as far as I know, I don't think another authenticator can do these authentications. Maybe I don't know. I know it couldn't at one time. So I use my Microsoft Authenticator because of that. Um, so if you've got Authenticator, that's the very first thing when I log in after setting up a device. The very first thing I do is I go to Authenticator and then restore my saved authentications so that I won't struggle so much as I start opening up all the apps that need some kind of authentication. Um, I think I'm somewhere around 25 different things that needs to be authenticated. I don't know how that compares with other people, but I do like uh, two-factor authentication. So all my social media stuff is two-factor authenticated. It's extreme passwords and two-factor authentication, and it's something I recommend everybody do so that you don't get hacked. Um, I don't know that it's a perfect solution, but it's a good solution. Um, I'm sure that authenticators are going to get cracked, but Microsoft does a great job of staying on top of security. They have to. You know, when you've got such a massive push of an operating system like Windows out and the most used stuff, see, Apple's starting to see this stuff. Uh, as the iPhone has become a very popular device, now it's a target, and uh, you're not a target if you're low on the radar with a low number of devices. It's not worth a lot of time because you know that there's only going to be techie people or specific people utilizing those devices. But when you look at mass use devices, you see opportunities to get bank accounts, etc. So anyway, I like Microsoft Authenticator because I'm positive Microsoft will stay on top of the security aspect of Authenticator and their infrastructure. They may get, it's not to say they won't get busted, but they'll repair it quickly and put out fixes for it quickly, more quickly than what I see Apple does and Google does. Both are very. I think Google's better than Apple, but I think both are. They're behind the curve of security. Microsoft's been having to deal with this since they they put DOS out. They went and bought DOS and put it out. So they've been dealing with this for a long time. I don't know that there's much more I can say. My use of the Duo 2 and Android 12L has been good. The experience is good. I'm gonna do a video on the experience, but I couldn't enjoy the experience at first because of the little annoyances. So yeah, I just gotta keep if you don't know if you hear it, but I just keep getting notifications. Um, Microsoft Authenticator is a fantastic. What I'm hearing is that some apps are the ones that are crashing the new update. Maybe some not that popular app. You know, no matter how you design something, and I'm speaking here to virtual machines, and apps are supposed to be isolated from the operating system. and from memory so that you can't trash memory. If you've programmed, then you can understand that it's not difficult to have things go out of bounds in memory. You use a wrong multiplier on an index, and uh, or not a wrong multiplier, but you've multiplied a value for an index, and then instead of resetting it before you multiply again, you multiply on top of it again, and now you're pointing to a point in memory that's, your memory's here and you're pointing out here. Now that crashes apps. And apps having direct access to hardware, back in the DOS days, we had that issue that apps had direct access to hardware. So they not only accessed the operating system anywhere that they wanted, or operating system memory, I should say, but they could also go directly to hardware. And one of the biggest challenges Microsoft faced when they were in the 90s was they had this wonderful operating system called OS2. And they, this is a whole nother video I could do, but Windows NT was a 3.0 version of OS2 that IBM didn't want to come out. They weren't ready to go 32-bit with things, and so Microsoft went ahead and pushed it out anyway. And the whole big thing about Windows NT was what's called the HAL, hardware abstraction layer, HAL, and everything is isolated from the hardware, and you have to go through HAL to get to the hardware. So there's a management that doesn't allow things to just poke right down into the hardware and, you know hose up the system. And this is a similar concept that Android has taken on. So in an app busting the operating system should not happen. That doesn't mean it can't happen, because you can still poorly write things. And uh, Google took over Android, and the life of Android, while long now, is still short in comparison, say, to the life of operating systems like Microsoft or IBM. IBM contracted out a lot of their OS development. OS2 was developed by Microsoft from scratch for IBM. IBM bought DOS from Microsoft, who bought it. um, so I don't know. I'm not. I wouldn't be afraid, and I'm not afraid to tell someone to go to 12L. Um, I don't know how you avoid it. Um, I know Duo One users with AT&T are still waiting, as you say, um, but it's going to come to you, and you got choices. Um, yeah, the apps should be isolated from the low level HAL. So it should not be the problem. Exactly. It should not be the problem. And should is a conditional statement. I was working with a customer back about 5 years ago, and um, I had to come up with a concept of how to make something work. And okay, it was one of those things, nobody's done it. So I had my idea of how things would work, and I'm there with the IT manager, and he's actually general manager of the plant. And I'm explaining things to him. He says, "Okay, so what do you think?" I said, "Well, I believe this should work." And he said to me, "Should or will?" And I understood what he meant, you know, and because I'm an absolute person too, probably one of my issues. I don't Not afraid to speak what's the situation is, and I don't mean offense to anybody, but Some people don't like to hear direct things. Um, should not have access to HAL. I agree, but things can happen. We had this control system that we were utilizing to use Windows NT and run actually a real time OS down beside Windows NT on the CPU. We had to have the developer of that developed a special HAL, a special version of the HAL to allow this to happen. So we had an operating system called Time, INTIME, that ran along with Windows NT. So that was pretty cool. It would boot up and grab its memory and things, and then Windows NT loaded on top of it. Um, a real-time operating system by Wind River called VxWorks does this now. There's a couple of that type of virtualization. Anyone listening, don't confuse this with virtualization that VMware does, but or Hyper-V does on a Windows machine. But we then wrote an app that could poke into HAL through HAL and get down to ring zero so that we could crash a system. And we wanted that so that we could demonstrate that we could crash Windows NT, but the control system running down an end time continued to operate. Um, and the fact that we could write an application to do that, and we had to be intentional. We were very intentional in doing this, but intent was able to do it meant that maybe something unintentional could do something similar too. And unfortunately, I understand Windows NT to a very, very, very low level. Uh, I could speak for hours about my relationship with the Windows NT development group back then and the things I got to see and do. But Android, no, even though Android is more visible, I could go look at code and things, but I haven't. I don't know enough down at that low level of Android to know how difficult that would be. I just know its concepts, and these things should not be able to happen. So these bugs that people are encountering should not happen, but they are. And the clearance of them, you can go through. I made a post yesterday, which got downvoted, which is what are your options? Your options are clear cache, clear memory, factory reset. Um, but you can't go in and manipulate things unless you're a developer. Uh, I don't know what one could tell people to do to go fix this problem. You can try to find is an app doing it, but an app shouldn't, as we just mentioned. Um, and it seems to be isolated to some certain apps. Now, is there some underlying goofy app doing it? Man, that would really be bad for Android if it is, because apps are not supposed to have what I call horizontal access, which would be over to other pieces of memory because that memory is isolated. So they shouldn't be able to do this, poke into each other. That's an old Windows thing, which really is an old DOS thing. So if you look at the DOS based Windows, which was your Windows 3Xs and Windows 95 and 98 and ME, those had that ability to do that. Windows NT virtualized apps, and then it had some virtual systems for like um, come on, Dale, Unix and OS2. You had those virtualized systems inside so that you could run OS2 commands, you could run Unix commands, POSIX commands. So um, all of that stuff was isolated so that an attempt to go in hit a wall, and you can't do that stuff. And that's the way Android is, or supposed to be. So that should not be able to happen. the OS has to manage that, and so if there's a bug in the OS, it could happen, but it would be happening elsewhere. And so when I look at this problem, I look for common things. And what's a common thing that everybody has? And there is none. There is no common thing. There's problems with people are facing, but I don't know if the problems are as big. I saw a post just a little while ago about Windows Central needs to get on Microsoft about, as if Windows. So I haven't seen, but Zach may not be having problems either. I need to go look and see. But those guys may not be having problems with their devices either. There's a lot of people not having problems. I know that. I've been contacted by them and I've seen people post. Um, do we know that some of those people don't have multiple accounts and they're posting? Some of them have a lot of karma. They put out a lot of posts. I look into that stuff sometimes, and you'd have to be doing a lot of double posting to have some of that stuff happen. But that doesn't mean that it's not the same person. Um, so you never know in social networks what somebody's saying something positive. Is it same people, same person, or same couple of people? How am I supposed to say something negative if I'm not having a negative problem? If I had a problem, I'd say it. I've not been afraid to say when I've had a problem. Um, I've been fairly fortunate, I would say, then through my use of a Duo 2 to have not encountered a lot of major issues. Um, because of the cost of the original Duo and the lack of a few things that I felt important at the time, I didn't jump on the Duo on the original Duo on launch day. I knew that it was a beta. It wasn't a release product. I knew that because back in our Windows 10 mobile development days, they were talking about that device. And I knew that they were developing operating systems and having problems with getting the Windows was not that version of Windows that they were looking to develop was not going to have enough of a mass market for Microsoft shareholders to accept money being dumped into. And that's why that got canceled. It just was not going to be enough of a market on ARM devices and all for it to be a successful product. So it got dumped, and they got the whole thing pulled out from under them, and we knew all that stuff was going on. Back in Windows 10 Mobile, we had the ability there with a few builds to run uh, Android apps, and that was all being part of that whole part of development. And so knowing that, I knew that Microsoft was releasing a nightmare when they switched to Android, and in less than 6 months, here's going to come a device running Android. Uh, so I didn't jump on it immediately. It took me about six months before, maybe not six, it's 4 months. Haven't seen the guys at Windows Central talking about issues yet. And I think it's a small set of I believe it's a small set of individuals. And what are the differences? And you have to think the differences are somewhere focused in on their device. Um, I went looking through my device to see if I could tell what hardware version I have. But quite honestly, I think we all have, or most of us have, the same hardware version. Microsoft made a bunch of devices, a certain number of devices. Those were all ran through production, and this is, I'm real familiar with Foxconn and these phone maker OEMs. I worked for Mitsubishi Electric, and yeah, I'm highly familiar with the Foxconn plants in China, making iPhones and mini iPads, and actually worked on a robot system that went to China to make the mini iPads, the first mini iPads. I saw mini iPads before they went into production. I was able to see some because we had to do some Mitsubishi robot stuff to handle part of that assembly. Um, so I'm real familiar with how phones are made and other devices. And our phones, I'm positive, our devices were made in a batch, and Microsoft figured how many they'd need based off of what went on with the Duo. And then I don't know how many subsequent runs they've made and if they've made any hardware changes. Now, because of supply chain issues with different electronic components, uh, there's a possibility that they had to change a component internal. I don't know that, but that's a possibility. I've seen it happen working for Mitsubishi Electric and me dealing with electronic stuff daily. I understand what's happening in that market of the supply chain of electronics to make things, and I know that people are having to shift from certain technologies to other technologies as a result. I don't know that happened, and that there's another batch of duos. So Shane, for example, has got the same version duo as I have, and maybe as you have. That's what makes this kind of perplexing is who has what issue and why do they have that issue and why can't it clear up? Um, the claim is that factory resets aren't helping people or some people. Uh, Knowing that it has helped some people, me being one, and some saying it doesn't help them, doesn't rule out that factory reset helps. It's just what's happening in the resets and restores, and so it really you just hate to think it starts pointing to something that is maybe not OS, but is library still underlying apps, library related. Um, what is heavily used on a Duo is Jetpack libraries, Window Manager, and the Compose functions. So that's a good question, Michael, but let me answer that. Um, I like helping people, and so that's why I was Windows MVP for almost 10 years, and I was an AT&T ace, um, and that's a customer excellence award that you help customers and you get an award for that. So for Windows Phone, because of my use of Windows Phone, or actually all the way back to I was on original Windows Mobile, all the way up through Windows Phone and then Windows 10 Mobile. I would answer and help people on the AT&T forums, and so I got to learn a lot about the AT&T process, not just for Windows Phone and Windows 10 Mobile, but for Android devices and other. Um, oh gosh, the old Nokia. I can't think of the operating system right now, but anyway, all the various OSs that have been on phones and require updates, and AT&T in general takes a while. Um, they always treated major upgrades differently than they did minor upgrades, like security fixes. So I could point to Android to this more. But back in the early days of Android, when we had point fixes, 4.1, 4.2, we had these different point fixes, whereas now point fixes are rare in Android. 12L being an exception, that's actually 12.1. So a jump from Android 3 to Android 4 they would wait a while, and you'd see some carriers would release sooner than others. Um, and some carriers, got praise for releasing this version earlier than that version. Um, AT&T just always seemed to be very conservative, and part of the reason being they modified the OS. They modified Android. Um, so they put their little hooks and things in that you can't uninstall. So AT&T never, when it got to Windows Phone and Windows Mobile, they were a month or more always on release until the end. And there came a point, and I had the opportunity to feed this stuff back. Um, um, to the AT&T group that you should just move to releasing Microsoft updates when Microsoft releases them. I'm sorry, I was testing receiving phone calls on my Duo, so I hooked back up. I use Uma, and since home phone calls only come in for scam now, political scam and spam, I disconnect the phone base so that I don't get that ringing. And now it's ringing anyway. Um, so I don't know about AT&T. This is a major upgrade. This to me appears to be their normal. We have to run it through all of our tests, and those tests are usually over a month. Maybe they've encountered some issues too, and if they have, they may wait for Microsoft to release a fix if it can be proven, and they'll communicate with Microsoft, or will they? Because they pretty much abandoned um, the Duo, didn't they? They dumped all their stock and of product. I did like Windows phones too. I've had Lumia 1020, 920, 1520, 640. Um, I'm thinking of the 900s. What I did not do is go to Windows Phone 7. I stayed off of Windows Phone 7. I stayed on Windows Mobile. Um, it's also noteworthy that Shane's bugs didn't appear right away. He gave it a glowing review. So maybe a factory reset gives temporary relief, but the bugs will resurface in time. Now, his glowing review. This is I like to do reviews, but I don't do reviews of things until um, after receiving or having a bit of experience. Not my not my thing because things can pop up. His review came out pretty quickly within a day or two. Um, I've gone way longer after my factory reset, and I haven't had a glitch. So I don't think it's that. Been no glitches, which is really odd. Um, the problems seem to be isolated. So what I'm planning on doing, and I'm going to do this live. I'm going to look at those problems, and I'm going to live so that people can see I'm not making it up. I'm going to go through them and see, like, call my device over and over and over and over, and see if I receive calls. I know I do, but I'm going I'm going to do it live. Same thing with messages, and um, I haven't looked at every bug on the list because I don't know. I've just looked at what people have posted, on Reddit and what they've said as a title to a post. So the things that I've seen have not been an issue. I did watch Shane's video and um, on his problems, and he was pulling his SIM card out, and I didn't, none of those issues I have. I've not seen, and I'm a long time into this factory reset. I factory reset within 2 days. Um, yeah, that special subject of a subset of people in phones, and well, this is just not that's not good for Android. But then again, how many people had problems with Android 12 or 13, whatever version of Android? So I'm gonna go back to 12 when I remember when it got pushed out to their Samsung devices. Not everybody, not everybody had the same problems. Um, I saw a few things myself, but probably of what I saw reported, I was a very small number of problems compared to, what other people were seeing, some other people. But then some people said they didn't have any problems. But there, you've got a wider range of things that can underlie. I've got an S21, but I got an S21 Ultra like real early. Mine's a version one of hardware. S21 Ultra. There's multiple versions. I don't know how many versions there are, but there's a difference right there. Say with S21 Ultras, mine's of the oldest version, and then you've got multiple versions people could have. We don't have that with Duos. Um, you've got more since you've got more users. What 1,000 times more users or more um, than a Surface Duos. I don't know what the number is, but it's large. We're small. They're big. Um, they have all these different apps installed. So maybe an app can, have a problem, but it's so hard um, to say. I think you can come off of the if you want to come off of the AT&T um, build. Shin Pokemon uh, posted on uh, Reddit how to do that. He had an AT has an AT&T device, and he posted a step guide, and I think he used part of a step guide off of GitHub to move your device over to a global um, image using the recovery or using the images from Microsoft. Um, the only thing I can say about me is that I beta everything. Everything is beta. That I could get a beta, and whenever I install an app, um, I immediately join beta if there's a beta to join, and I can join it. So the apps that I've seen mentioned as being issues, I have the absolute latest versions of them. Um, I think it's a low probability that it's anything launcher related because launchers updates. Microsoft Launcher. There's one version of Microsoft Launcher works on everything, and all these little betas that they've been releasing have been to fix things on Android 9 or Android 7 or this device on this version of Android because I ask them every time there's a point version. Sometimes I ask them on the subreddit, and sometimes I send them an email. Can you explain what the changes are here? And they're all related to something totally unrelated to Duo. They hadn't done anything for Duo and probably since um, I don't know. Maybe since before the Duo 2 was released. I can't really say. Now, sometimes they hit code just to improve performance of launcher overall. That's to be for everything because I have seen sometimes that throughout the updates that things got better um, in responsiveness of gestures, which launcher handles. But let's see, you've been aggressively checking manually. Yeah, I you might be checking a while. Uh, I think you're gonna. My guesstimate is that AT&T is gonna wait um, at least 4 weeks, maybe eight, somewhere between 4 and 8, if they're using their old conservative approach to releasing an upgrade. If for some reason in their testing they've encountered this problem, um, then maybe longer. You also have the issue of they just don't care about it anymore. So, what resources are they putting towards testing it? They have all these other devices that they're selling that are far more popular that they've got to test, and they've got this little oddball over here that they don't sell anymore. Uh, most of their paying customers aren't using. So how much effort are they going to put into testing it? I don't think they care about if you bought the device off of eBay or wherever you may have got the device where they dumped them. I don't think they care about you as a user there any more than they, care about me with my Spectrum, one of these devices I'd bought when I was on Spectrum. I hate to say that, but that's probably the way that it is. I know from my when I was an ace, that was the kind of the impression I got on different things. Uh, the subset of Windows phones that they sold to Android phones, they put less effort into testing Windows Phone. We were told that. Um, well, I hope you don't have an issue with yours. Don't be misled that because I'm not having an issue, you'll not have an issue. But I think you can clear it because I saw Shane put a video out that he's not wanting to attribute it to factory reset, but he's going to go through this thing. His device is working okay now, and he's going to go through this thing of slowly enabling apps. I don't know. Maybe you'll find something. I tend to believe not, because that's not the way Android works. And if it happens, that's a Google problem that Google needs to fix with Android. Yeah, it might be related. It might only be happening on a Microsoft device, but Android's not supposed to allow those things to happen. So then you have to wonder: is it Jetpack, which is part of the developer kit for Android? That's a Google thing too. Um, I mean, quite honestly, what is Microsoft other than the firmware on these devices? Um, Microsoft's not heavily modifying Android like, say, Samsung does. Microsoft's trying to stay as clean as possible with Android. That's why they didn't develop anything to do dual screen. They worked with Google to develop the extensions to Jetpack to do all this stuff that a Duo does. They could have ventured off like LG and Samsung did and done their own libraries, and which is what a lot of people thought Microsoft was doing. You go back and look at content created by people, including Windows Central. That's what you would. It's the impression that you got. Uh, but the reality is, Microsoft was working with Jetpack and which is a Google thing, not Microsoft. That's a Google thing. And so they work closely. They're the only ones working with Jetpack. So you could say it's a Microsoft thing, but Google's doing the coding and the releasing. Microsoft's giving them the feedback. This is what you need to do. And of course, Microsoft has access to the code, and because it's open source. So, and they can make adjustments and feed it back to Google, but Google in the end pulls it together. So uh, I find it hard to point a finger at the device, just as I would. It's less hard to point. It's harder. Excuse me. It's harder to point a finger at the device than it would be, say, at Samsung, just simply because Samsung does more modifications of things. But even then, it still is are things that Android's not supposed to allow. So its walls are not as thick or as strong as they should be, I guess. And I'm talking about the walls of the VMs that they put up around the apps um, that are put up around them. I, I would hope nobody has problems, and I would think maybe if someone wanted to, if they had a problem, they reset and they had a problem, reset again. Um, why that does something, I don't know. Uh, maybe Microsoft's able to see this and figure it out, but trust that Microsoft didn't see this problem. They would not have pushed the update out. Kind of got that impression from watching Shane's video this morning. Uh, Microsoft did a lot of testing on this, and they would not have pushed it out if they were seeing these problems. Now, what the procedures are of all the people that internal test, because it's all Microsoft people as far as I know. Um, I should push hard. I still have a beta ID from Microsoft. Throw that at the Surface group and say, hey, use this ID and put me on. They don't use those IDs anymore, but um, it's a small group of people that's testing, but Microsoft would not have pushed out the update if they were having problems. They don't do that. I've never seen them do that, and I'm sorry, but I haven't. Um, the only times I've seen it happen was when they were pushing out betas and they knew that there were issues. This is not a beta. This is not considered a beta. So, back in my beta testing days, we would be told about known issues that hey, we haven't fixed everything, and there's still this issue. But if you want on this beta, install it and be aware that this is going to be an issue. And of course, you knew that maybe some other issues would come up. I didn't see anything attached that said you may have to factory reset your phone or you're going to see phone loss use. There was that issue back not a year ago, but it seemed like it was back early this year when they had a phone issue with was it emergency calling or something? I don't remember now. And of course, they released and didn't know, and that was a small subset of devices. So, without question, it's a small subset and maybe isolated to a small group of people. Will you fall into one of those groups with your device? I don't know. I need to do some more digging. I got to open back up device info and look harder at my device and see that I can identify the hardware levels, etc. And maybe something can be, determined there. So I'll probably post something into the Telegram group about that. What I discover, and if you're not familiar with the tools, there's Device Info and Device Check are two that I have installed. Uh, I paid the developer for one of them. I like the other one. Also, CPU Z can see some of this stuff too. CPU X and CPU Z cannot. One or the other. I used one of those tools too back to look at some things in the past, and I just kind of laid in on device info. It's a tool that I used in the last video that I put out where I showed that you actually have, or how you can see what version of Android you have. So that's a good tool to look at your device and gather some information, and maybe we could see something there. Um, I've seen issues in Windows where video drivers cause issues with apps that aren't video intensive, but they still cause issues. I don't know if there's anything in the Qualcomm libraries that could maybe be causing issue with some things. It's not supposed to happen in Android, but it could, I guess. Well, anything could happen. Um, that's kind of why I wanted to have this discussion, and I've actually gone on longer than I thought I would. Wow, I went on a long time because I like to see some comments thrown up, and then uh, gives me some things to think about and look at. Uh, Maybe you people watching, you'll take that tool and go in and find what your hardware levels are. Now you're waiting us. There's three people, but two people commenting, um, and you're both on AT&T devices. So it still would be good to know your hardware levels. Yours are going to be potentially, I'd say not potentially, your devices are going to be different than mine. My Duo, I have an original Duo as well. Um, I'm playing with it right now, putting launchers on and testing launchers. I'm trying hard to find a good launcher with a good UI. I'm playing with Computer Launcher. Um, about a year ago, I maybe a little over a year ago, I communicated with the Surface team, and they asked me to send a video. This was on my Samsung S21, and I showed them using Computer Launcher, which has a Windows 10 UI, not a Windows 10 mobile, a Windows 10 UI, start button, pull up, all apps, just like you have on Windows 10. And I sent that to them, and I'm using a version of Computer Launcher 2, which has a Windows 11 UI. So you hit the start button, it pops up. You've got your pinned apps and you've got your all apps. You can select between the two. Um, and it's got a few little issues, but I'm gonna put together a video of that and send it to the Surface group. But they did ask for back a year ago when I was explaining to them what I wanted to see and how Computer Launcher worked. Then they asked me to do a video and send it to them. Uh, does that mean that they're going to take that feedback and give us a better UI on launcher? I don't know. It's been over a year. I will tell you that the feedback I got was, we want to do this, but that's launcher group's a small group. And that's the group that said, we want to do this, but we don't have the resources. So that group is kind of handcuffed into what they wanted, what they can do by money. Where you're going to put your efforts, and where they're being directed to put their efforts. So, I mean, quite honestly, it looks like launcher in general, not just for Duo, but in general, there's not a lot of effort going into it other than maintaining, keeping it working. I don't know why. Does that mean that I mean, we're over, what, gosh, 12's been out and 13's on devices and 14's going to be going into beta soon. And Microsoft has not released a version of launcher to match 12 and to bring forth the things that UI enhancements that 12 brought in. So um, that's a little concerning when you look at. I've been on launcher since it was Arrow beta, and you look back at the past of how they continue to release updates, um, and now they're kind of stagnant. And I'm speaking stagnant on my S21 Ultra, which I run Microsoft Launcher on it. I don't like One UI. I don't like it. Never liked it. And even though it changes, I don't like it. So it was kind of a deviation of where this little discussion was going. If you guys would get device info and capture your information, I'll capture my Duo, original Duo. Uh, I've got like 12 launchers installed on it, and I go through each launcher after there's an update of it to see has anything changed. I noticed that Nova Launcher is or just released some fixes for 12. It might have been 12L that it said fixes were for, but I didn't notice anything foldable slash dual screen enhanced on it. I'm not a fan of Nova Launcher, but I've got all these different launchers, AIO. I've put them all on there to see who's going to hit a foldable experience quicker. And it should work on a Duo. They just might not address that center gap that we have, but maybe a launcher is going to come out that we can use. You can use launchers and you'll still have your dual screen experience, but with the exception of being able to double launch an app and have one app on one screen and one on another. But I've noticed things like with a computer launcher, uh, not computer launcher two. There's several computer launchers. There's a computer launcher 11, and they must all use a similar library and then branch off of it. But I noticed with computer launcher, which I really liked on the S21 Ultra because it was really sound. But on the Duo, if I swiped up to get the task list, um, and this is a bad thing, the device would restart. So Android rebooted. So that action killed Android. Um, that's disturbing. Maybe I should report that to maybe even report it to Microsoft. Maybe it points to an underlying problem that's going on here. I don't know. It just occurred to me. If anybody's listening, um, yeah, I saw that with a couple of launchers that it killed Android. Just Android rebooted on me as soon as I did an action, a gesture action, and I think it was on both launchers. It was the swipe up to get the task list. Your gestures change with each launcher because the launchers set what navigation gestures you're going to have. So I lost like the home gesture on computer launcher doesn't work. I don't know that there is one. So anyway, um, I think that's it. Unless somebody wants to throw one more comment, I am going to do a live video of receiving calls. I'm either going to call myself or I'm going to get somebody to call me. Um, I'd really prefer to find somebody that could call me. I don't know that any of you people are in the US, but it'd be really great if I could get someone to call me and text me. And so they like send a text and I respond back. They send a text, I respond back just to see if we missed anything. Um, I like to do these things in groups of 100 because 10 is only 10%. If you don't have a problem, you don't know. And if you do have a problem, it only happens one. Is that 10% or is it more? So you got to get up to 100 to see does it happen around 10 times to make it 100. Thousands a lot. When I was doing those gesture videos and I did the swipe down over 100 times, many times. Um, I recorded it one time, but I did it more than one time. Um, yep, go have fun in your Zoom meeting. Thankfully, I don't have any meetings today. We got a hurricane coming our way. Um, and I got a football game to go to tonight because games got moved from Friday night to Thursday night. Um, and I've just got to work on stuff from my business trip from yesterday. Then I'll have meetings probably tomorrow. Okay, thanks for watching, people. That was a long time for a few of you to watch. I don't know if there was any information that came out to you, but I would like some feedback if you've got it to give on your versions of stuff. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end this thing. Have a good